When I was in college, I noticed that a majority of the priests would talk about themselves heavily during their homilies. I was reminded of that this morning when listening to a Father Cedric who has a radio program. I believe that these priests mean well and are not trying to be narcissistic. Was this type of preaching encouraged and taught in seminaries? Is it still? Historically, was there a method which could be called the Catholic way to preach?
Well, firstly, I don't know if it's encouraged in seminaries. Maybe it is. I don't know.
The way our priest teaches, or excuse me, preaches, it's as if it was at least before Vatican II, because he always says that, oh, I shouldn't talk about myself, and then he does the personal anecdote. Like, he very reluctantly does it, but he only does it when it's to communicate a point effectively in a way that nothing else would really do.
Well, but before Vatican II, they had a method of teaching in seminary, preaching, which was called sacred eloquence. That was the title for it.
Interesting.
And there was a method and a manner to it. And of course, that varied from country to country and language to language. In French, they would talk about the grand séminaire style of preaching. Very, florid and emotional. There were, however, the realization, again, in the United States and in English and in the 20th century and the 19th century, there was the realization that not every priest is a tremendous speaker. And to make up for this, there were volumes of published sermons, usually, books of them, usually priest could use if he didn't trust his own sermon writing abilities, because there were certain priests who were renowned preachers, and they would very often would do this. They would write books of sermons. Don't forget too that a lot of preaching went on at parish missions that were they're much more common than they are now. Very often a parish mission would be an annual event. I don't know too many parishes that have them now as annual events. And basically would have a priest from one of the orders come in, a Dominican or a Passionist or someone like that. He'd give the parish mission for the week. And every night there'd be Vespers, benediction, and a rip-roaring sermon about, getting your mind right, getting right with the load. Just really, really slamming into it. And very often saying things, denouncing sins and so forth, in a way that the regular parish priest didn't feel comfortable doing because he had to see the same people every week. Whereas you bring a priest in from outside, and he can really slam the thing because he doesn't know these people. And he can, be upfront and forward about the human condition in a way that somebody who's got to deal with these people every day and every week would feel perhaps reluctant to. I mean, let's face it, if a priest is getting along well with his parishioners, even though he hears their confessions and all that, he probably doesn't want to give them the fire and brimstone that we all need from time to time.
Yeah. So
the parish mission made a lot of sense. And the parish missionaries were very eloquent preachers, as a rule. And then you had people like Bishop Sheen, who was renowned as a preacher, early on. But you've got to bear in mind that there were a lot more opportunities preaching than there are now. Not just because there were generally more masses said, but because Vespers and benediction was said in most bigger parishes every Sunday. And families would go, what was very, very common before Vatican II was someone would go to communion early in the day, then go out for breakfast, come back, high mass, then they go out for the Sunday, and then come back in the evening for Vespers and benediction. That was the way a lot of people lived. So, and of course, there would be a bit of a sermon with Vespers and benediction. If it was the parish priest, it wouldn't be the rip-roaring mission sermon, but it would be something. So, but at any rate, to answer the question specifically, I do not think they were encouraged to talk about themselves that much, especially the parish clergy. You know, if you're denouncing sin and you're using yourself as an example, I don't even want to hear no sermon like that. Now, my brother, let us talk about adultery. I will illustrate the evils of adultery from my own life. Father, no. No, we don't want to hear this sermon, Father. Let's not. Well, then, let's move on to another sin. No, Father. No, we don't want to hear about your sins. So, I really cannot conceive of a good old-fashioned parish mission preacher using himself as a major example in his sermons.